Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Jeff at Lockdown Security, www.lockdownsecurity.ca. And today I am making what is probably going to turn out to be a pretty long video, but I think it's one that is going to be useful for people who are looking to choose between the two competing brands of auto security, which is essentially Compustar on the left and Viper on the right. And I want to make this video to help you make the choice between the two, because to be honest with you, these two brands are the pinnacle of auto security in the North American market. Both of them have their pluses and minuses. As you can see, by the number of boxes here, Compustar has a lot more offerings than Viper, but that's not to knock Viper to say that they don't have a lot of choice, because they do, and there are distinct differences between the two. Those of you who know will probably notice that I don't have any of the DS4 technology here. I actually don't really carry DS4 from Viper or from Direct Electronics, but I will talk about that in this video. So, first things first, what is the main difference between Compustar and Viper other than the brand name? Well, the biggest difference is going to be in configurability with Compustar. What I mean by that is, as you can see by all of these boxes here, this is just a sampling of the different ways that they sell their systems. Now, Compustar, for the most part, for most of their systems, are going to do it in a component level. What does that mean? That means that you pick the controller, this is a DC3, that's a CMX, so you have your choice between those. There's also the CM9A that's available as an alarm only, but most of our sales at Lockdown Security are either going to be based on the DC3 or the CMX, and we've made a video outlining what the difference is between those two controllers. Actually, what we made was the difference between the DC3 and the CM7000. The CMX has been the replacement for the 7000. But long story short, we base most of our systems off of one of those two controllers, and then we pair a key fob kit. Now, in the efforts of this, most people, when they're buying a key fob kit, a lot of them are going to go with a two-way kit, two-way being a remote with an LCD display. As you can see, here is but an offering of what Compustar carries. There are others in the Compustar Pro line, such as the T13, which is above this model, but we don't have it in this video. But essentially, these are the two-way key fob kits, and the differences between them is going to be in cosmetics, and then, for example, in range. So the Q9FM, 3,000 feet, Q9SS, 2 miles, so basically 10,000 feet. Then you got the T12, which is ruggedized, and it's 15,000 feet. So that's going to be the main difference between them when it comes to choosing your two-way RF kits. Now, Viper, on the other hand, does a lot of their sales on the like all-in-one box level. So what does that mean? That means that what you're seeing here are full systems. So they include the controller, the wiring, the key fob kit, the antenna, everything in one box. Compustar also does the same thing with their LT line or LT series line. For example, the 2WQ900AS. That would be a similar sort of setup as these Viper systems, where everything is in one box and you buy it all as a combo. Now, what's not included in these boxes from Viper or from Compustar is what this is. And you notice this is from a different brand name. This is what's known as an integration module, sometimes called a bypass. You can see that they call it a remote start and data bus interface. This is the iDataLink ADS ALCA. This is universal. It can be used with Compustar branded products or Viper branded products. And then you have the Compustar Blade AL. This can only be used with Blade compatible products, of which right now the only brands that support Blade would be Compustar is the main brand. I believe Omega might have some Blade compatibility, and I think Direct Start, there was a sub brand of a product that also supported Blade. But you have to understand that Blade is really and truly 98% of the time used with Compustar products, and that is with a brain or a controller that has a Blade cartridge. Now, I understand it can be very confusing, but essentially what you kind of need to remember when you're choosing between the both is, before you make your choice, Compustar is going to be mainly component level. You choose your controller, your key fob, and your accessories, whereas Viper is going to be all in one box. Now, there are other technical differences between these brands, and that would be Viper with their standard, analog series kits, which is what you see here. This is a Viper 5706V. This is a two-way alarm and start. This has been technically a flagship model for many years. And then you've got the Viper 3105V, which is a one-way alarm only. Essentially, this includes, like I said, everything in this box: brain, wiring, key fobs, but no bypass. So these are analog, meaning that they don't have any sort of digital connection, whereas something like the DC3, this is what would be known as a digital or a data bus integrated remote start. What does that mean? That means that the bypass is built into this. It's got CAN bus circuitry built in. It can communicate with CAN bus and LIN bus and different computer networks and different vehicles, all within the circuitry of this brain or of this control module, whereas the Vipers strictly analog. So in order for these to communicate with a digital platform like a newer push-to-start vehicle, you would need to have an interface which acts as a bridge. So basically you'd be buying this and this, or this and this. So you have to remember that when you see pricing for these systems on the internet, whether it's from Lockdown Security or anywhere else, you're going to have to add your bypass module almost guaranteed for any vehicle newer than about the year 2000, especially when you're adding remote start, because vehicles from the year 2000, most of them have been coming equipped with immobilizer keys since then. Now, what you also have to remember with Compustar, going back to this brand, when you're basically optioning these systems, the CMX out of the box is technically just a remote start or technically just an alarm. That's the same with the DC3. It's technically a remote start or technically an alarm, but it's not both. It's not a car alarm with remote start, or it's not a remote start with car alarm like you would see in these systems here, or like you would see with the LT series when it says AS. What you have to do to make these alarms or make these remote starts with alarms is you have to add the FT Alarming Kit. And what's in here would be the siren, the FT DAS digital sensor, the LED, and then the FT E-Lock relay, which essentially is your immobilizer relay. So that's another thing that you have to consider. And that's one of the things I dislike about Compustar, to be honest with you, is that they make it very confusing for customers, even my own staff sometimes, to know what to configure in terms of selling to our clientele, because you have to make all of these choices, whereas when you have everything in one box, like these guys or like this guy, you don't have to make choices. Everything is included with exception of your bypass module, so it's easier to choose these guys. Now, also, there is some brand loyalty with the dealers that you will go to. There are Viper dealers, there are Compustar dealers, but it's generally rare to find both. I mean, there are dealers out there, for example, us at Lockdown, we carry both, but generally the dealer or the store that you go to is going to have a preference between the two brands. Why is that? Well, it's because a lot of installers and a lot of install companies will have gotten used to or accustomed to installing one or the other brand. And when you change between brands, you have to not only remember all the wiring and the ins and outs of programming, but you also have to remember this, like what product is paired with each system. So generally when you go into a dealer, you're probably going to find that they're either a Viper dealer or they're a Compustar dealer. If they're selling both, then they will have their reasons, like we do, for selling both. And like I said at the beginning of this video, both brands are fantastic. You are not making a poor decision if you choose one over the other. You just need to understand that the decision you make when you're choosing these brands is which one is best for you. So let me get into a few other things. What makes Viper superior to Compustar, and what makes Compustar superior to Viper, and a few other things that I'm going to bring up now. So Viper, one of the things that makes them superior, and it's very detailed, you wouldn't necessarily know this, a lot of dealers don't tell their customers, but you can actually program the inputs of the Viper system on their two-way systems to tell you which sensor is actually being triggered. So inside this box, there's going to be a shock sensor. So automatically out of the box, if this was installed in your car, the alarm was triggered and the shock sensor was the reason why the alarm went off, you'd be given a notification here with a little hammer indicator telling you that the alarm went off because of the shock sensor. But what's cool about Viper is on the back end programming, you can tell it, you know, on this input is sensing a glass break, or on this input is sensing a tilt sensor. And essentially what happens is it changes the icon on the two-way remote to tell you exactly what input is being triggered. That can be very valuable, because if you know that you live in a neighborhood where there's loud exhaust, or you know that you tend to get false alarms from the shock sensor, you may see that on the remote as the alarm is triggering, and it may not be as big of an urgent matter as if it was the tilt sensor. Because if the tilt sensor was equipped and it was on your vehicle and it showed you here, then you'd be like, oh no, somebody's trying to tow the vehicle, or somebody is trying to steal your wheels, for example. So the context of the trigger on the two-way remote is very, very important. And on Viper, that's customizable. If you came over here to Compustar, unfortunately, that is not customizable. Basically, what it shows you when the alarm triggers, it will show you whether it's door, hood, or trunk, same as Viper. Viper shows you that too. But if you have an input trigger from a shock sensor, tilt sensor, glass break, or anything like that, it's just going to show you a hammer. And I do this motion to kind of animate the hammer. That's all it's going to show you on the remote. The inputs are not configurable for what the actual indication is. So that's one of the things that makes the Viper system superior. Also, Viper has stayed, this could be a knock on them, but they have stayed the same for well over 10 years in terms of the technology that they're using in here and the wiring schematics and all of that. So if you are familiar as an installer with these brands, even if you bought one 10 years ago, you bought one today, the wiring and the schematics and the way that this programs is the same. Now, again, that could be a detriment, because when you come over here to Compustar, my hats are off to them. They innovate so frequently that basically their systems are changing a lot with the time. So for brand new vehicles, sometimes I say Compustar is really the only option, because they have the digital integration that Viper may lack. Now, I mentioned earlier in the video regarding DS4. What is DS4? Well, DS4 and DS3, for example, are terminologies that Viper has given to their all-in-one data interface remote start alarm controllers, okay? And they have benefits such as having built-in Bluetooth and other things that come along with DS4, and they have firmware downloadable solutions where you pick your vehicle, you download the firmware, and then it's installed specifically on that vehicle with a specific T-harness. Compustar obviously has the exact same thing. This would be what would be equivalent to the DS4, which is the DC3. This would be a data interface module. In a way, the CMX is a data interface module too, but the CMX is tailored to work both on vehicles that don't have immobilizers, that are not digital. It can be used purely analog, just like Viper, and it's designed in that that method in mind, but it can be integrated as a digital solution when you pair it with a Blade AL, and essentially this becomes a digital data interface. So I know that there's a lot of terminology. A lot of this really comes down to whether you're an installer or not, but when it comes down to being data integrated and being up to today's current technology, Compustar is definitely superior in that manner. Even when you factor in Viper and directed DS4 technology, I'm sure if you speak with a lot of shops and you said what's better, DS4 or DC3 or Compustar CMX, they would almost guaranteed say that the Compustar solution has less glitches, less issues, and all of that. And that's just the absolute truth. But if you're comparing analog solutions to analog solutions, then it's tough to really say, because like I said, that configurable sensor input on the two-way remote, as much as that's a minor feature, it could be the difference between this being better versus this. Now, there is one other thing. I'm just gonna show my face here. Hello, everybody. There is somebody behind this camera, and it is me, Jeff at Lockdown Security. I want to show some of the available options that both brands have and kind of give you an idea of why that makes them different too. And again, this video, I could make a video for hours going through the differences, but I just want to kind of briefly show you some other aspects here. So I pulled out a bunch more boxes, and some of them are from Compustar, some of them are from Directed Electronics. And for those of you who don't know, Directed Electronics is the parent company of Viper. And for those of you who don't know, First Tech is the parent company of Compustar. So both of them are set up in that regard. That can also get confusing, because you could call this a Viper piece, you could also call this a Directed piece. You're not wrong either way. Obviously, this is badged Viper, this is badged Directed, so Technically, this is directed, and technically that's Viper, but they're both made by the same manufacturer. You can see the same thing here, directed Smart Start. And I'll get into the smartphone compatibility in a moment, but some of these accessories, what are they? Okay, here, KP2 keypad accessory. This is pretty cool. It's a touchless keypad that you can pair with a CMX, and basically this would give you access to the vehicle through a touchpad that would get mounted to your windshield. So if you were sharing the vehicle, you wanted to lock your keys in the vehicle if you didn't want to bring them with you, this would be your remote access. This is an accessory that's exclusive to Compustars, specifically for the CMX module. Viper, they do have something similar for the DS4 line, but they don't have it as perfected as the KP2. So that, in this case, makes Compustar superior. What else does Compustar have? They have this, and I just made a video on this. This is the FTI SPT SCH. This is a Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram anti-theft harness specifically designed to work with CMX or DC3. And this is something that's basically addressing the rash of car thefts that's happening all over North America. This essentially is an advanced immobilizer harness that's controlled and configurable by the Compustar system. And this has so many different configurable options. I could make a video on this for over an hour going through all the different options, but you can see it's actually compatible with CMX, CM900, CM900, AS, CM2500. So it is also compatible with the DC3. They don't list it there, but just for everybody's knowledge, it works with DC3 as well. Just so you know too, a CM900S versus a CM900AS, they're essentially one and the same. It's just the difference is the 900AS will have the extra sensor input that the 900S does not. And for those of you who want to know what these letters stand for, S is starter and AS is alarm and starter. So you'll see, for example, there, 2WQ900AS, that's alarm and start, okay? The other terminologies you'll see, for example, there, that says CMX HC. HC stands for high current. If you look at the DC3 box I have, they have LC, which is low current. What you'll notice is if I were to open up this box, it would have very thin wires inside. It has the low current harness versus if I opened up this box, it has the heavier gauge high current harness inside. But if you bought a CMX LC or a DC3 HC, the actual brain inside the box is one and the same. It's just the harness that's included with it. So that does confuse people sometimes. What is this guy? This is a digital tilt sensor. Okay, this would be the 507M. They have it listed as the Dub 1. I'm just going to open this up to show you what's inside. I have to do it one-handed. So essentially, this sensor has been the same for many years. It's the 507M. They call it the Dub 1. They must have redesigned it a little bit, but it looks identical. This is basically a digital tilt sensor. So once it's installed, it'll actually detect whether the vehicle has been towed, tilted, either way. It's a really cool sensor, one of the best out there. And like I said, when you plug this into a Viper system, it configures, or it can be configured to actually show on the two-way remote, Viper remote, that it's actually being triggered. Now, this sensor is universal. You could use this with a Compustar system as well, but it's obviously designed. You could plug and play this sensor into a Viper kit. I'm just going to put these associated with their brands. Here's another one. This is a radar field disturbance sensor. This is made by Directed. This is one of the best radar sensors out there. What is this sensor used for? This sensor would be used for convertible vehicles. If you wanted to leave the windows down, you would basically mount this on the interior, and this would allow you to arm the vehicle with the windows or the convertible roof down, and if somebody reached in, they would basically trigger the alarm. Again, this is a Directed piece. It's designed to work with Directed, but it's universal. You could use it with Compustar if you want to. Here's a programming tool when you're programming a Blade AL or an ALCA over here. This is the ADS USB, and you'll notice that this says iDataLink. Just as a heads up, iDataLink has a very close partnership with Compustar, so that's why these two brands really go hand in hand. But this can be used and plugged directly into a Viper. They have provisions for that. Now, smartphone control. I know this video is getting quite long, so I'm just going to hurry up on this. Smartphone controllers. That's another thing that you have to choose between Viper and Compustar. And I mean, isn't this incredible? Look at all these boxes. And this is just not even the half of what you can get in terms of products that work with each brand. But what will also make your choice between Viper and Compustar is which smartphone control you want to go to with. And smartphone control would be an app on your phone that controls the actual system. So for example, Directed Smart Start, this works exclusively with Directed Electronics brands, Viper, Clifford, Avatal, Hornet, Python, so on and so forth. This does not work with Compustar. So if you have a Viper, this is your option. And then you have basically My Car 2, which is brand agnostic. You can use this with Compustar, Viper, 410, Omega, Crime Stopper, so many different brands. This is a universal smartphone controller that has been designed to work with multiple brands, including Viper. And then you have Drone Mobile. This is a Drone Mobile X2. This will only work with Compustar product, and that's because Drone is a brand that's owned by First Tech. It's basically a Compustar brand and it's exclusive to Compustar products. So if Drone is regarded as one of the best smartphone control apps out there, if you want to use Drone, you have to choose Compustar. So I hope that kind of helps you with your decision-making process. I know I didn't really answer it yes or no, which one is better. Basically, which one is better, it depends on your circumstance, and you're not going wrong if you choose either. My personal preference is Compustar. I am biased. We sell more Compustar than we do Viper. But at the end of the day, like I said, it really comes down to your vehicle, your brand preference, and exactly what you're looking for. There are pluses and minuses with both systems. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel. It goes a long way to help us make more videos like this in the future. Let me know how I did in this video. If there are questions that I didn't answer, I can certainly make another video. And if you need more explanation, feel free to drop a comment below or email sales@lockdownsecurity.ca. Thanks for watching.